Everyone. Yes, being recorded. We love it. Um, Real quick introduction. My name is Leah Parker, and I'm an outreach specialist with Child and Family Center's Domestic Violence Program. Um, I have been partnering with COC for a couple of years now for their Welcome Week, and we really wanted to dive into a topic that was really important and kind of especially with changes that have been made in the last year to Title IX in terms of safety regarding sexual violence. So we just wanted to share a little bit about what Title IX was, what does it look like, what changes have been made, how does that adjust things, even some definitions of sexual violence, how COVID has affected that as well, since now we are all distance learning or we are working remotely, whatever that may look like. um, if you do have questions, we are going to have an opportunity at the end to ask those, so feel free just to jot those down, and when we open it up for questions at the end, I will be more than happy to answer those to the best of my abilities. I do want to start off by saying we are talking about Title IX. I am not an attorney. I have no legal training whatsoever. This is just based off of trainings and research that we've done on our own. So if there are questions that I'm unable to answer, I will have people to direct you to that are with COC for further clarity on those. So let's go ahead and get started. Everybody can hear me okay? Perfect. I see a couple thumbs up, so we're good. Okay, so today we are going to be kind of hitting on a couple things. Like I said, the definition of sexual violence, what falls underneath that umbrella term. We're going to discuss the effects that COVID has on sexual violence reporting, some barriers that the pandemic has created, talk about Title IX, what does it mean, what does it look like, and then ways that you are able to report sexual violence both on and off campus as well. So, like I said, sexual violence is an umbrella term. Okay, it incorporates quite a bit of different things, everything from verbal to physical to technological forms of harassment. So, again, things such as catcalls, victim blaming, excusing behaviors, excusing actions that have happened that somebody may say, you know what, I wasn't comfortable with that, but yet they persist to say, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Kind of minimizing what's happening can be considered sexual violence as well. Stalking is a huge one right now, especially with the increase of technology and sharing locations, seeing people's locations consistently, being able to track someone down, tracking devices. Stalking has become one of a very high form of sexual violence that we are seeing right now, especially with the rise of technology. Sexual coercion, sexual jokes. A lot of times this is overlooked because there's excuse me, there has become like this normalized mentality regarding sexual jokes. We become a little desensitized to those types of actions. And what happens is that those instances of harassment sometimes are minimized even by the person who's at the receiving end of them, because it's like, okay, oh, it's another joke, whatever. But if it's considered and seen or felt as being harassing and creating that hostile learning environment, then yes, it does fall underneath the category of sexual violence, and can be considered underneath the Title IX requirements. Trafficking is a huge one. A dating partner can also traffic their dating partner as well. So it's not, sometimes we get in our mindset that human trafficking only happens to someone who's been, kidnapped or isolated. But in reality, it can happen even amongst dating partners, and that is a form of sexual violence there. Sexual harassment. it also falls underneath that category. I feel like we're a little bit more familiar with that term in terms of actions that are happening on campus, even in the workplace as well. So I think we're pretty familiar with that specific term. Again, relationship violence, Title IX has recently changed their definitions, which I'll go over in a second. That would include relationship violence, whether you are married to your partner, whether you are dating your partner, whether you are just kind of in this hookup relationship, that also is included. Any type of romantic, intimate partner connection that you have with this other person, if there is violence connected with that person, it can definitely be part of that sexual violence. And it can also be within the family unit as well. Sexual assault. We do want to also say that it's important to remember, sorry, I'm just going to minimize something that just popped up. Here we go. It is important to remember that sexual violence doesn't immediately mean sexual assault or rape. We do have to make sure that we are looking at the umbrella term of sexual violence, because a lot of times people hear sexual assault and instantly think rape, when in reality sexual assault can be touching. It can be not necessarily a penetrative act, but a physical act that's not considered direct rape. And because we're looking at the wider definition of sexual violence, it's important that we are able to disconnect the two in terms of their definition. That, again, looking at the list that's being populated right now, sexual assault is one form of sexual violence. So just because someone says they were sexually assaulted or raped doesn't necessarily mean that, or just because someone says that they were raped doesn't necessarily mean it's sexual assault. Sexual assault is the umbrella term that also encompasses that definition. Voyeurism, okay, that's another form. It is exposing yourself to someone else and finding pleasure in that. Stealthing, okay, that's another word for also just covert condom removal is part of that as well. So that can definitely be seen as sexual violence. Non-consensual photos or videos, especially right now, since everything is pretty digital, everything is being done online, and we are in a very remote world right now. Non-consensual photos, non-consensual videos is a huge thing right now, because people aren't really allowed to be in the same room, or someone may be distancing more due to health problems, or especially in the very brink of all the pandemic stuff, really people were quarantined, they were isolated. And so we did see a little bit of a rise in the non-consensual photos and videos, because that was one of the only forms of harassment. And a lot of the different platforms that we're using now make it very easy to send those photos, to post those photos, to create those photos too, because a non-consensual photo can also be editing somebody's face onto another photo and sending that out as well, and can be seen in that harassing way. Indecent exposure, that kind of corresponds with voyeurism. Voyeurism is finding pleasure in watching other people do sexual acts. And so that's part of that, is forcing somebody to engage in an act. And doing that. Indecent exposure is the one where they are exposing themselves, flashing and things like that. So all of these different things are considered sexual violence and can be considered if they also correspond with the definitions put in place by the education boards, that these can very much be the foundation of a Title IX case if they also correspond with those definitions. So in terms of COVID, right, because a lot of these things tend to be like, okay, well, that kind of needs to happen in person, and may not be happening now because of COVID. All of this stuff, what we do need to recognize too is In terms of the world right now, right, we are in this global pandemic, right? And over the years, history has shown that rates of sexual violence increase during state of emergencies, such as natural disasters, active conflict, health crisis such as the COVID pandemic. For example, statistics show that after Hurricane Katrina hit, there was a 45% increase in the amount of sexual assault cases that continued well into the recovery period. Similar, these themes are taking place during COVID-19 pandemic as well. We are seeing an increase of violent behaviors happening specifically against women. I don't want to discredit the fact that these things are happening against males as well, or members from the LGBTQ community too. But what we are noticing, and kind of in line with the themes that we've seen in past years, is we are seeing a specific rise, a higher rise in that when it comes to the victim being a female. In some countries, there was even helplines were seeing a 5 times increase in the number of calls that they are receiving. Restricted movement, social isolation, economic insecurity increases the vulnerability of the victim, increases the vulnerability to violence within the home, online. Some hotlines reported there even being, an 18% jump in the first 2 weeks of lockdown in terms of their calls. They were seeing hotline calls just going through the roof just in the first 2 weeks. I know for us, and I'll get to that in a second, we even saw that mirrored within Santa Clarita. But if we're talking about sexual violence and sexual assault and sexual harassment, according to the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence, 40% of their rape crisis centers saw a significant increase in the demand for service since the initial shutdown in early 2020. Again, although the crisis centers were seeing an increase of need, hospitals and clinics had done fewer sexual assault forensic exams than this time last year. In Washington, D.C., forensic nurse examiners performed only 24 forensic exams in March of 2020, and that is a 43% decrease from 2019 during that same month. Again, we are seeing this theme echoed across the nation, where crisis hotlines are seeing an increase in calls, but specifically due to COVID and the fear of contracting or not knowing how the virus moves, especially at the very beginning of all of this, people were not seeking the help they needed in the places that were open because of the fear of contracting, COVID. It was keeping them isolated. So those who were saying, yes, I was sexually assaulted, and I do feel the need to move forward with a forensic exam, which some of you may know as a rape kit, I don't feel safe going into the hospitals. So I'm just not going to do anything about it. So for a specific hospital and nurses to see that much of a decrease in their forensic exams, imagine what it is across the nation. If that's just one city, then every other city is also seeing that mirrored within their forensic exam percentages throughout that year as well. I know in Santa Clarita, sheriffs saw almost a 60% increase in their domestic violence calls. Now, domestic violence is slightly different, but it also can incorporate sexual assault, sexual violence. I work for our domestic violence program. Like I said, I've been on the phones and heard people share their stories with us, and there are some that have included, not only am I getting physically abused here, but there also is a connection in terms of sexual violence happening during that as well. So again, even though the sheriff stations were seeing an increase by almost 60% in the calls, our hotlines decreased exponentially. Like it was, we would have days where the phones just wouldn't ring at the beginning of COVID. And that really shows that there was a need in the role. COVID in that fear of this disease really limited people's ability to reach out for help. And it did it in a couple ways here. Here we go. So the role that COVID played in is a little, it's twofold. One, it increased the danger, and at the same time, it decreased services. So what that means is that in terms of increasing danger, there was unpredictable stressors that increased the changes in violent behaviors. Violent behaviors are a response to other things. It is a response to insecurities on the rise. It is a response to feeling as though basic needs are not being met. It is a response to stressors such as a loss of a job, uh, being put on furlough, being quarantined, being isolated with that person, or being isolated away from somebody can add to an additional stress and increase the kind of survival mode, that fight, flight, and freeze. And if it's a fight, it can lead to violent behaviors as an unhealthy coping skill for the additional stress that they are under that COVID brought. Stay-at-home orders limited opportunities for victims to seek outside services. Isolation, feeling like they can't go anywhere. There were a lot of businesses that shut down for a couple months as well. I know the courts were down for a while, so even like seeking out restraining orders, if that was something that they were needing, that wasn't easily accessible to them. Getting to on in-person services wasn't available, things being done online. Being home with someone who is assaulting you, being home with someone who is abusing you in any way, shape, or form really does limit the ability that, yeah, it's easy for me to say I'm going to the grocery store, but then instead go get help. But in times of quarantine, in times of isolation, where really the online format's the only route you have, it really limits your ability to reach out, especially if you're like, my partner is always sitting next to me, or the person who is assaulting me or harassing me is always there, or they are tracking my phone, they're tracking my calls. Like, it's not easy for them to reach out. That was a huge reason of why we saw a decrease in the amount of people who were seeking services, both for domestic violence as well as sexual violence as well. Also, delayed response when police were called. We were hearing reports from people who were calling us that they were calling the police as they were instructed during this time, but it would take the police up to 4 hours to get there, especially at the beginning of everything COVID related. There was a lot of panic, there was a lot of fear, and within the police department too. Somebody reaching out for help, that really puts them in the place of increased danger in that moment. Someone reaching out for help is at the highest risk of retaliation the minute they reach out for help, whether it is in terms of sexual violence or domestic violence, or any other type of violence. Things can change within an hour, within a half an hour. But if the abusive party or the aggressive party has up to 4 hours after somebody makes a call for help, things can change drastically. Somebody's life is in danger. Another incident can happen, or they can be manipulated into, retracting their call, going back and not pressing charges after that. So that's another huge thing too, is, the longer help takes to get there, the less likely the report is going to be made, less likely someone is going to be safe when they get there. And there were even instances where the police never showed up. And that's another huge thing, that especially at the beginning of all of this COVID pandemic and really the isolation, getting help was very, very difficult. And also, like I said, COVID not only increased the danger in the home, but it decreased the availability of services. Like I said, service providers were closed and only offered telehealth services. Someone who's isolated with their batterer, someone who is isolated with their abuser, with someone who is assaulting them, isn't going to be able to access you know, virtual assistance because of fear of, are they going to be home? Are they going to be sitting next to me? You know, they're not working, so I have no disconnect from them. There's no way for me to safely engage in telehealth services. There's also, again, an increased fear of contracting COVID prevents victims of sexual assault from seeking examinations needed to assist in pressing charges, to have that evidence in place. A lot of those rape kits, they're really most beneficial and most effective within 72 hours of the assault, especially if it is an actual penetrative, you know, assault. That each time someone changes their clothes, each time someone uses the restroom, each time somebody showers, it takes away that evidence. And so if COVID is a fear and really preventing someone to go into the hospitals to seek out, the, exam that they need, it can prevent them from doing that. And now they've lost all evidence to be able to support their case. And also, in terms of students like you guys, distance learning also limits access to on-campus reporting, especially if you are being harassed by a student in an online class, or you're receiving unsolicited photos, or you have been physically assaulted by a dating partner or a classmate, or whatever that would look like. Title IX provides coordinators and officers on campus, but if you aren't meeting on campus, you may not even know where to go. You may not know how to reach out. You may not know the email address to that person, and you could feel isolated in the event. And I think that's why your student leaders or your leaders here encouraged us to do a topic on this, so that way what rights you have, where you can go to report, because you guys still are distance learning in that way. And so we want you to be able to have the tools necessary to protect yourself and to feel safe and to feel less alone when reporting sexual violence of any kind. So now that we've kind of looked a little bit, excuse me, now that we've looked a little bit into the role COVID plays in how its increased danger limited the access to assistance, we do want to talk about what Title IX is. And there have been some changes to it. I'm going to get to that momentarily. But first, I want to talk about the different types of support and safety it provides you. So Title IX, let me go ahead and pull it up here so I have a little bit of bigger writing on my screen here. There we go. So Title IX is a federal law that protects you no matter your sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation in terms of equality on campus and safety in terms of harassment, assault, whether it is from a peer, an authority figure, or it takes place at a location that is controlled, or an event that is controlled by the campus. So one, it talks about the safety. Okay, so the law requires school officials to take immediate action to protect you when you report sexual harassment or violence, to prevent it from continuing and ensure no retaliation happens after you speak out. Okay, so it provides you safety in terms of you cannot have any retaliation for seeking assistance from your school campus. In terms of fairness, the law makes sure that a school investigation into the sexual harassment and violence is prompt and fair to both parties by providing equal rights throughout the process. We don't want to discredit the fact that there have been, in past cases, there are such things that have happened as, false reports of sexual assault. This part of Title IX provides a fairness. It's going to lead to an investigation to make sure the claims that are being said are true. Now, with that being said, only 2% of cases that are usually brought up regarding sexual assault are false. You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than having a false sexual assault case brought up against you. So again, the fairness part of Title IX is making sure that the investigation is thorough, prompt, and fair to both parties to make sure they are getting to the very root of what is happening there. The next one is respect. The law requires schools to tell your parents about its policies against sexual harassment and violence during school or related activities, not only to the parents, but to the students, to any vendors. All staff is required to receive training regarding Title IX and sexual assault policies, sexual harassment policies on campus. Any any policy put in place is to be easily accessible by the community as well. I was on your website earlier and was able to find the policies really easy. I'm going to show you where they are on your school campus or your school website a little bit later. That's the part of that, is to tell that so that way everybody has a clear understanding of what is expected on a school campus, and really laying out those policies to everybody and making sure everyone has them, so that way no one can say, well, I didn't know. Well, it's like, well, no, actually, due to Title IX, we are required to let you know, and here's where it was when you register for campus and where you went through that. Justice, okay, the law makes sure you can report sexual harassment and violence to school officials or police by telling you who to file a complaint with, where to do it, and how to do it, and make sure you receive justice. Every school campus should have a Title IX officer. You guys have a couple, and I am going to share those names and I believe emails with you later on towards the end of the presentation. But each school campus should have someone that is able to walk you through the process of filing a complaint. If it goes to court, walking you through what's expected there, really taking you by the hand and making sure that you have the support on campus, that what does that look like in terms of your schedule? What does that look like in terms of your living arrangements? I know, I don't know if COC does dorms or has any housing available, but thank you. If you transfer to university, that would also include any housing and making sure that you're safe there. So that's what that person is put into place for. That is their role, to assist you there. Privacy. The law makes sure that you can speak privately to someone in school about any concerns you have regarding sexual abuse, violence, or harassment, and that any report stays private unless there's an ongoing risk. I am going to talk to this a little bit later in terms of making a report. You are able to do it anonymously if you want. You don't have to have your name connected to it unless you disclose that you would like that. If there is an ongoing risk, if the Title IX coordinator feels that this does need to be turned into a formal complaint due to the knowledge that they're receiving, then the privacy of it may change. But again, they're going to walk you through that at that time. And then lastly, the support. The law requires that schools support students who report sexual harassment and violence to ensure they can stay in school and access the support resources they need free of charge. Again, the school is there as a support for you. They are there to ensure that you are still able to learn even in the midst of the investigation. And this, again, is available to both parties involved in the investigation. Your education should not be hindered in any way in terms of an investigation, seeking assistance, reporting. Again, resources should be made available to you at the time of reporting and throughout the process as well. So these are kind of the 6 pillars of Title IX, you can say. Now, again, in 2020, the Trump administration, they did make some changes to this, and these are just some of the main ones that were changed. I'm not going to go into detail about all of those. I am going to give you some places you can go to look further into these changes. Some of the changes directly impact the protection Title IX provides, although it doesn't allow us. Sorry, I started reading my notes and realized I already said that. So I want to go over the main changes that I feel are very important to know now. The other things I would encourage you to do more research on, especially if you feel like this is something you would like to know more about, feel free to do some additional digging on those. A couple places that I found some pretty clear summary of those changes is one, safebay.org is a really great resource. They kind of broke down a little bit of what each of the main changes were. Just keep in mind that some of these changes may be slightly different when it comes to colleges versus K-12 schools. I believe Safe Bay works specifically with K-12 schools, but some of the changes do correspond to both. So you can feel free to check it out there, but just keep in mind that there may be some differences between the two types of education centers. And then lastly, you can always go to the United States Department of Education website. Again, you can just search Title IX and it's going to bring up a bunch of different articles that you can read in terms of like the new Title IX resources for students and kind of the changes that have taken effect. So a couple of the ones that I did want to touch base on is the definition. Okay. One change to the definition is that it is unwanted or unwelcome or unwanted conduct determined by a reasonable person to be so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. So in the past, the and used to be an or, so it can be either one of those. But with the new changes, it kind of has to touch on all three of those things. So what that does is it does add limits and restrictions to when sexual harassment policy violation is found. So instead of people saying, okay, well, right, it was objectively offensive, so we can go with that. Not anymore. It has to hit on all three of these categories in order to be able to be moved into protection under Title IX. Also, quid pro quo, this for that. Sexual harassment, sexual assault, and domestic violence and stalking do fall underneath this definition as well. California is required to address on and off campus reports of sexual assault, domestic violence, and stalking. Okay. In terms of jurisdiction, okay, complainant must be participating, sorry for my little typo there, in or attempting to participate in an education program. Anyone who makes a case that has, formally dropped out of school, or someone wants to make a report and they're saying, well, I'm going to wait until after I graduate because it's too much going on right now and I don't have time for that. They are not going to be able to do that. You have to be actively participating in the education program and or activity, or attempting to applying for it. If you are no longer part of the program, you would have to seek outside representation in terms of making a sexual assault case. Okay. Off-campus incidences are only protected when the location or activity is controlled by the school. So if it's an off-campus activity that the school is hosting and an incident happens there, Title IX would cover that, and if it's with another student, that's another thing that is kind of changed within this new definition too, is that the school has to have control over either both parties or the location of what is taking place. So it's kind of all three of those in terms of seeking assistance if it's happening off campus, if it's at a sporting event that, is taking place at another school, a fraternity house, whatever that may look like. If it is a location that is controlled by the school and they are kind of control of both parties while they're there, then Title IX would cover that. Okay. Also, in terms of the participation and attempting to participate in the education program, even if the person who has, even if the accused person is still on campus and the victim has dropped out, Title IX would not cover that. the victim, the person doing the reporting, filing the report, has to be the one that's active in the program in order for Title IX to cover that. So really these changes are very major because it has drastically narrowed the Title IX jurisdiction, where it can help, what falls underneath the category of protection for this specific type of assault, or whatever that would look like, what would fall underneath that based on the different things that we spoke about. So again, these changes can really hinder someone being able to reach out for assistance. And then in terms of reporting, there have been some changes there. So again, persons required to report, college and universities kind of have been given a little bit more flexibility in terms of actual knowledge. So meaning schools can determine for themselves which employees have authority to institute corrective measures, such that their knowledge of sexual harassment complaint is actual knowledge, meaning that they have direct notification of a specific incident. So for example, Title IX officers, they are the ones who are able to put into institute corrective measures. Therefore, they are now the reporting party. They are the persons who are required to report. Prior to this change, students could report to anyone that they felt could offer assistance. This has kind of narrowed it down to specific people who have been trained and who are able to put into effect corrective measures. Even though that has been a change, California law does require that all reports of sexual assault committed on or off campus received by Campus Security Authority to be submitted to the appropriate liaison without identifying information unless the survivor consents to identification. Basically, what that says is a student can go to anybody who falls underneath the category of a Campus Security Authority. So I know you guys have campus security, someone who is in charge of security, they're overseeing an event, somebody who's watching the gate. I know like K-12 schools, high schools, they have usually someone monitoring the gate. That person would be considered underneath that definition of a campus security authority. So if somebody reports to campus security, that person is then obligated to report to the Title IX officer coordinator without identifying information. We had a student come to us sharing this information with us regarding this student. There is a possibility that the person doing the reporting can opt to have their name provided. Then the liaison would be able to directly reach out to them to start a possible complaint if that is the student's desire. Okay. Complaints. There has been some changes there too. Schools are now required to respond to any report of sexual harassment. Schools are required to investigate formal complaints in writing from a reporting person. Title IX coordinator may file and sign a formal complaint. If a person reporting does not file a formal complaint, the wishes of that person should be respected. So a written complaint is kind of set in stone. You are saying, yes, this is my complaint. I'm writing it down. It is my name. Here you go. This is what I want to happen. A formal complaint will just kind of move things on a little bit quicker based on the normal process for reporting. An informal complaint, someone just walks into the Title IX office and said, this happened and I would like to report it. It is up to the Title IX officer to hear out the person who is doing the reporting, the survivor, and go based off of what their wishes are, to respect their desire of what does that mean? What would you like to happen in terms of this, and kind of follow suit. If the coordinator decides to initiate a formal complaint and based on the heard circumstances, that could happen, and it's really up to the training of the Title IX coordinator to use their judgment based on what you're telling me. I feel that there needs to be a formal complaint made so an investigation can be brought up, and then work with the survivor based on that. And then again, mandatory obligations. So schools cannot be deliberately indifferent to a report of sexual harassment. So they can't just kind of sweep it under the rug and deal with it another time, or, okay, we'll kind of like, okay, so I guess we'll move your class, like just doing the bare minimum. They can no longer do that, because then they are accessible to a lawsuit at that point, where someone can take measures to go take the school to court, because they said, well, they were deliberately indifferent towards hearing my case out. This includes not only the investigating the incident fully, but also in offering supportive services to the complainant that must be non-punitive, non-disciplinary, and not reasonably burdensome on the other party. They must be designed to provide both parties with equal access to their education, protect their safety, and deter sexual harassment. So again, that goes back to that main kind of image that I showed you in terms of like the pillars of the Title IX federal law, is that support. It includes that as well. They have to be deliberate with their actions. They have to be prompt with their actions. If they're not, then they run the risk of also being sued for a lack of follow through, for kind of brushing things under the rug. So again, they have to be deliberate in their actions and following you with that. Sometimes in some cases that means that, the title coordinator didn't sign a file or a formal complaint, seeing that it was viewed, that it was processed or whatever, that can also be seen as being deliberately indifferent. Okay, so again, they have to follow up regarding this. There used to be a time frame in which, this is another one that I didn't write down, but I did want to touch base on this, just so you know also the risk of this change. It used to be that the schools had to respond, I want to say within 180 days to a case being brought to their attention. Now there is no limit. So what that means is that if a school does, and again, keeping this in mind with this deliberately indifferent towards that, it can cause an unnecessary delay of, investigating that case. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen the documentary Roll Red Roll, but that's a perfect, or not in Roll Red Roll, I'm sorry, The Hunting Grounds. That is a very great example of many cases where, especially private schools, Ivy League schools, were kind of pushing off investigations because, whoever the assailant was helping them win football championships and that kind of thing. So they were pushing back investigations until they won the championship, and they're like, okay, now that it's months later, almost a year later, we'll go ahead and investigate. That's part of the risk that this new timeline change brings forward, that as long as they're showing, well, we're not really being indifferent, but we are going to kind of pause this for a moment. Again, it's creating little loopholes that could cause some negativity for the victim and hinder an investigative process. Yeah, like Brock Turner at Stanford. Sorry, I saw the chat box light up, so I checked it. Absolutely, I think that's great. A great example. I do want to get some time for questions, so I'm going to kind of go through this next section a little bit quickly. In terms of the process of Title IX, making a report on campus, again, it starts with filing a complaint. It can be done online, it can be written, meeting with the Title IX coordinator and going around that way. From there, it's going to lead into an investigation. And then from that investigation, it is going to lead into a hearing. California now requires a hearing with an opportunity for cross-examination. That's a little bit of a change too, is that now the victim can be cross-examined, and that can be re-triggering, re-traumatizing for them, especially if someone's not trained well to do that. Then again, throughout the hearing, you're going to an outcome and an appeal. And then from there can be possible petition for change. Anybody can petition if they are unhappy with the outcome of the hearing. They can petition for a reinvestigation. And if the I always get these two mixed up. If the respondent, I believe that's the assailant there, they petition for a rehearing, then they don't have to notify the victim of that. All of a sudden, they'll just kind of get a summons for that. And so that's something that has changed recently as well. Now, that's the process of what Title IX would look like. And again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a trained Title IX officer, so I can't speak directly to each step based on what your school provides, because it may be different from school to school. But on campus, you do have a wonderful team of individuals who are able to help. These are your Title IX officers, Jasmine Ruiz and Diane Fierro. Go ahead and write down their names. Their emails are easy to find on the website. I was able to find their emails pretty easy. I didn't have consent to put their emails on there, so I didn't, but I did want to provide you their names. And then also you can always reach out to Michael Jocelyn in his role as the Dean of Students, and he'll be able to link you to either one of these Title IX officers so they can walk you through that process. And again, they are accessible even during distance learning. So feel free to reach out to them. Also, just if you are looking for information regarding policies, Title IX, and what that looks like, you do have your You Matter website on the Student Services page. Again, it's super helpful to go there. I was, like I said, I was on there this morning. This is exactly what it looks like. Really easy to maneuver and find what you need. Again, it has that part in there that says, immediate action, get linked into that immediate reporting, and get linked on where to go there. In terms of off-campus support, because we know sometimes, say you did just graduate and now you're ready to make a report, you can't do it through the on-campus Title IX officer due to that new definition. You can obviously go to Santa Clarita Sheriff Station to get directed to the right person. Sorry, I kind of messed up the number there. Strength United is a great resource in terms of all things sexual violence and assistance there. They do have a local office in Newhall. That is their number there. Feel free to take your phone out and grab a picture of this. I do know that this is being recorded and will be put onto the, I want to say the Student Life website. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it will be made accessible to you to refer back to, but they're able to assist there. Obviously, you can walk into any emergency room and get assistance in terms of being directed to forensic exam if that's something that you would like as well. Child and Family Center is also here for you. We have our domestic violence program, 661-259-8175. And then we also have a 24-hour domestic violence hotline. Again, even if it's like, what, I'm not in a dating relationship with this person, this is someone I don't know, please feel free to reach out to us. We want to get you linked into any type of service or assistance available to you. 661-259-HELP is our 24-hour hotline. Our office is open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. But we know assaults and abuse doesn't stop just because you hit the weekend. So that number is available to you as well. And then obviously your student center has all of our resources available as well. With that, I have come to the end of my presentation. I will do my best to answer any questions that have come up. I will be here for about the next 10 minutes too, if you want to wait till people kind of siphon out and then you kind of stay to chat with us. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here, and we will